Yeah. And I'm probably going to leave my mask on. I told James this. My mom is in hospice, and I got a call today from her 24th year. She's probably dying right now. So I'm probably going to go in to see her, so I don't want to kill with COVID.
Sorry to hear that.
You guys. I'm just going to throw this here. All right. My name's Brent. I'm with the BCA.
James with the BCA.
Hey, I'm Blake Hofstetter with the FBI.
And what's your name?
Blake Hofstetter.
Okay.
I can get you my card.
Bob, do you need a card, or?
Yeah.
Maybe just so you remember who was in here.
Trying to make sure
I got one for you too.
Right. Good collection. You guys want one?
I've got.
Sure, I'll take yours.
I've got some plenty.
Yeah.
Can I give you this box?
Yeah, that's the warning letter. I've read that. Or seen them.
All right.
That's the one I was telling you about too. Why don't you read it over?
And then sign it.
Reception in here. You guys have
it's kind of a black hole in here. Yeah.
Is there a jammer or something?
I don't know. You know, I think it depends on your service.
Yeah, because it didn't work in the
I get
AT&T, but
yeah, no,
Verizon
Verizon
works.
works pretty well in here, but
figures.
that AT&T wouldn't be as reliable. All right. Thanks a lot. All right. Water's free if you need it. Okay. I guess just for purposes of the record, I'm just going to kind of do a little introduction here about just naming everybody that's here. But I want to make sure I have your name correct. Is it Tou? Is that how you pronounce your first name?
That's correct.
T-O-U?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a middle name?
I do not.
And Thao. Do I have that right? T-H-A-O?
Correct.
Can I get a birth date from you, sir?
1-2-86.
1-2-86. All right. How about an address?
You know, can I ask you about that? What address do you want him to give? We've had information that there may be threats, so I don't want to have his address become a public record.
Okay. What about phone? Same?
Yeah.
Okay. No worries.
You guys want you can use my office address, the MPD.
Okay.
I know he's no longer employed there, but I don't want to do anything to put him in danger.
I totally understand. All I can do is ask, so
Okay.
I'll respect that. That's fine. So today's date is June 2nd, 2020. The time is 15:05. The BCA case number is 2020-338. This is Special Agent Brent Peterson with Special Agent James Ryerson, FBI Special Agent Blake Hofstetter, and we're here with Thao and his attorney, Mr. Robert Pauly. All right. So before we started here, I presented you with that form, the investigative warning form. You had an opportunity to review that?
Yes.
Discuss that prior with your attorney?
Yes, sir.
All right. So is it your understanding that you're here voluntarily?
Yes.
You realize you're not under arrest nor going to be arrested?
I do understand.
Okay. So everything that we're going to talk about here is on a voluntary basis. Bob, anything you want to add before we kind of get into it, or?
I don't have anything specific to add, thank you.
Okay, great. All right. Well, if it's okay with you, I'd just like to kind of start and ask some questions. Usually just kind of start with some background information, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. I guess just, can you tell me, like, what level of education you have after high school?
Associate's Art in Law Enforcement from North Pennsylvania Community College.
Okay, and when did you get your associate's degree? What year, I guess?
Roughly probably 2008.
2008, okay. And then prior to becoming a police officer in Minneapolis, what did you do for a living?
I did security.
Where at?
Wayland Security was was the last name.
Is that here in the Twin Cities?
Correct.
Okay. What year did you get hired by Minneapolis Police?
I believe 2008 was when I got hired as a community service officer.
Okay, and can you just explain what a community service officer is for the city of Minneapolis?
It's kind of a recruitment mechanism to kind of recruit folks from different backgrounds. And like I applied and got accepted in. Pretty much is kind of they pay for our education and prep us for the police academy.
Okay, so is that a sworn, licensed position as a community service officer? Okay, and how long were you in that position?
Roughly a year and a half.
Year and a half? Okay, and this would have been 08 into about 09 or so?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any prior military experience?
No.
Were you ever a police officer anywhere else other than city of Minneapolis?
No.
Okay. So after the CSO or community service officer position, what's the next, I guess, step or progression to becoming a police officer?
A community service officer if they pass and get licensed, they get and then they get promoted to a recruit officer.
Okay.
And attend the police academy.
Roughly, do you remember when you started the recruit academy?
I'd say close 2009.
2009? Okay. And how long is the recruit academy?
About 4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months. Okay.
Or
And
offhand.
no, that just rough estimate's fine. So what's kind of the day-to-day at the academy? Like, what do you do at the academy? What do you learn at the academy?
Pretty much just you kind of get the tools to learn to become a police officer.
Okay.
Learn policy and skills that will eventually be used into the street.
Like, what are some examples of some things that you would learn at the academy?
Policy, defensive tactics, scenario-based training.
Firearms. Okay. Is there a component of the academy that's like scenario-based learning?
Yes.
Did you ever have any formal training at the academy, or even maybe after the academy, in crisis intervention or de-escalation techniques or anything like that?
Yes, the police department at some point had sent the whole department through a crisis intervention training.
Okay. Do you recall how lengthy of a training that was?
I believe it was a week.
It was a 40-hour or a week long, and you successfully completed that?
Yes, sir.
Do you approximately know what year that was?
I do not recall offhand.
Was it after the police academy?
It was.
Or during the academy?
I believe they have a little part, the CIT training.
Yep.
But most of my, I guess most of the intensive training occurred at, I don't know, maybe the 5-year mark of my career.
Okay. Okay.
Just roughly.
All right. So you were already on the job on the street, and you went through that. Was that a voluntary thing, or did they send you?
It was a mandatory thing.
Mandatory thing. Okay. And you, just so I'm clear, you did successfully complete that?
Yes.
Okay. And when you say CIT, we're talking about crisis intervention training?
Correct.
Okay. And we'll come back to that a little bit. So in the academy, are you taught like first aid and CPR and things like that?
Yes.
What's like the highest, or what level are you at as far as medical training?
Pretty much it's just first aid, and then refreshers every few years.
So
first aid.
Okay, so basic like CPR, first aid. You're not like an EMT or higher than that.
No.
Okay. And is that something that they train you in the academy and then you refresh every so often?
Correct.
Is that a yearly refresher?
I want to say it's bi-yearly.
Okay.
I don't remember offhand.
Okay, understood. So after the academy period ends, what's kind of the next step in your training?
You go through field training officer school.
Okay. And is the abbreviation for that FTO?
Correct.
Okay. Approximately how long is that process for you?
I believe it's like 6 months process.
So you have 4 to 6 months in the training academy, and then another 4 to 6, or another approximate 6 months
roughly.
in
Yep.
FTO. And then just kind of generally, kind of high level, what do you do in FTO training? How does that work?
Pretty much you kind of follow a mentor officer, experienced officer.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of just teach you the ropes of being a police officer in the real world.
Is it the same training officer through the entire process, or do you
No.
how do they mix that up?
I believe every month
Mm-hmm.
you cycle through different training officers.
Okay. So are you in different parts of the city in different shifts and things like that, or do you kind of just stay on the same?
I believe you're assigned to a precinct for first a few months, and then you get reassigned to a different precinct for different exposures.
So during your FTO process, what precincts were you assigned?
I was assigned 4th, 1st, and also 3rd.
4th, 1st, and 3rd. Okay, so 4th precinct is what part of the city then?
North Minneapolis,
1st is what,
downtown.
downtown area, and then 3rd is South Minneapolis. Okay. Did you successfully complete your FTO training, or did you have to get kind of extra training, or
I did a good extra training.
like an extension? I think they call it.
Correct.
Okay. And how long of an extension was it?
I don't recall offhand. Maybe like a month or less.
Okay. Obviously, you successfully completed it. When you are going through FTO training, are you a fully licensed police officer at that time?
Yes.
Okay. So, what was your most current role with the police department? What precinct were you out of?
3rd precinct, and patrol officer, responsible for 911 response.
Okay. What shift were you working?
Middle watch.
What are those hours?
4 to 2 a.m. in the morning.
4 to 2 a.m. Okay. And did you have a specific district that you were assigned?
Yes, the Sector 3.
Sector 3. Can you just, what are the borders of, or what's the area that's Sector 3 in the first?
Border is, east border is Hiawatha, the south border is Highway 62, the west border is 35W, and the north border is 42nd Street East.
Okay. Is that a fairly busy area of the city?
I would say it's more a quieter area.
Of the precinct, I should say. Okay. It's a little quieter area?
Correct.
All right. So, are you confined to that district, or are you allowed to kind of go up throughout the precinct?
We're not necessarily confined to the district. We're just assigned to take calls specifically to that district and patrol that area, but we're not necessarily mandated to.
So, I mean, the incident we're going to talk about here that happened on the 25th, that happened in the area of 38th in Chicago. Would that be outside of your normal patrol district?
Yes.
Is it common, though, to respond as a backup or assist other officers in other parts of the precinct?
That's correct.
Okay. Go ahead. Did you have any additional responsibilities with the police department? Any specialty assignments, or were you yourself a field training officer? Or anything like that?
No specific specialized training.
Okay. All right. What about a patrol partner? Did you typically have a partner?
Whoever's assigned to, we're all assigned different squads. Pretty much, there's 4 or 5 to 6 people that may be assigned to it, and based on who's working that day, it's whoever's on your squad.
Okay.
You're assigned to work with.
Did it tend to work out that you'd be with 1 or 2 officers generally all the time, or did you constantly have different partners?
I would say the middle. Since I went to middle watch, I've gone through several different officers.
Okay. Okay. So on the 25th, what we're here to talk about, did you have a partner that day?
Yes.
Who was that?
Officer Chauvin.
Had you worked with Officer Chauvin previous to that day?
Yes.
Okay. Have you known him for a while?
When I went to 3rd Precinct Middle Watch, that's when I first met him. And
When did you go to 3rd Precinct Middle Watch?
I went from Dog Watch to Middle Watch.
Okay.
So I'd say roughly 3 years ago was when I transitioned over.
So you've been on Middle Watch for about 3 years.
Correct.
Okay. And so you've known Officer Chauvin for about that amount of time.
Yes.
And were you in a regular, semi-regular partnership with him at times?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know him outside of work?
We don't really talk outside of work. I don't really talk much
Don't socialize
too much.
Okay. Is he related to you in any way?
No.
No.
His wife is not related to me. That's your ask.
We're hearing these rumors,
Yes.
and I wanted to just
Yeah.
figure if that's true. It's not true. Okay. As a patrol officer in the 3rd Precinct, Middle Watch, do you wear a uniform?
Yes,
Do you drive a marked squad car?
I do.
Okay. Can you just describe for us kind of what your uniform looks like, your kind of day-to-day uniform that you would wear?
Navy pants, sky blue shirt, outer sky blue vest, and pretty much your standard police equipment.
So, as far as the standard police equipment, you're referring to your belt?
Yep, belt.
Can you just walk us around what you carry in your belt?
My right side is my handgun. On my stomach, right side here, it's my mace. My left side quadrant here is my magazine. I have also a handcuff right here as well, next to my gun. And then another pair of handcuffs, my back left side, along with my radio and flashlight. And I do have a glove, disposable glove holder on the back.
Are you issued a taser?
Excuse and taser with next to the radio.
So on the opposite side of your handgun, is that
Yep.
what you're... Okay. All right. Your uniform, do you have any patches or anything like that on it?
Standard Minneapolis police patch on both sides.
Okay. Are you clearly identifiable as a police officer in that uniform?
Yes.
Have you ever been confused for something else other than a police officer in that uniform?
No.
Okay. Are you issued a body-worn camera?
Yes.
Where on your person do you typically...
Right next to my radio, which would be right about approximately mid-chest.
Mid-chest, okay. The date we're here to talk about, the 25th, was your body-worn camera on your person and activated?
Yes.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review your body-worn camera video from that day on the 25th?
Yes.
When did you watch that?
Today.
Did you watch it prior to today?
I did when to clarify, I guess. I did when we do police calls. We enter case numbers.
Yep.
And sometime, majority of the time, especially if the driver, the thumbnails
Okay.
of the video will show just a steering wheel.
Okay, like the first frame of the video.
The first frame.
Okay.
So it helps to just click and just see what video this is,
Okay.
and then you should just pause and then it's that video. So then I put in the case number
Okay.
specific to that video.
Okay. So your responsibility then, when you have recordings, is to categorize them. And sometimes in order to categorize them, you need to watch them. Is that what you're saying? A little bit, just to figure out what it is.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And how do you watch them?
It is your the phone, the city issued phone.
Okay. So it connects somehow to your
Wi-Fi, yes.
Understood. Okay. Did you watch the whole video, or
Just to get a sense of the scene, what video this is at.
and is that all within the policy of the police department to do that?
I don't believe there's any policy that says that you can't.
Okay. Perfect. You mentioned you watched some video today, and that was here at the BCA, correct?
Yes.
Who was present with you when you watched that?
My lawyer.
Okay, Mr. Polly?
Yes.
All right. Anybody else present?
Nope.
All right. And how many videos did you watch?
I believe it was 4 videos.
Did you watch them in their entirety?
Yes.
Okay. How many times through?
Once, and then the longer video, about a second time.
Okay, so the main video that kind of shows the incident we're here, or part of the incident we're here talking about, you watched twice?
Correct.
Okay, understood.
Well, let me just intervene. Did
Sure.
you watch the entire large video or just parts of it?
Just parts.
So one time through, and then went back and watched parts of it.
Correct.
Okay, I understand. Your squad car, do you typically drive kind of the same squad car every shift?
That specific one, 352, is not our squad.
Is that the car you were in on the 25th?
Yes.
Okay.
We're designated squad 330, but it was the actual squad is 352.
Okay. So does your call sign necessarily have to reflect what the squad car number is?
No.
Okay, so your call sign is 330, but you're in squad 352.
Correct.
Okay. What did the squad car look like that you were in? Can you describe that?
It's one of the older squads. It's an SUV from Ford.
Okay.
Standard Minneapolis police marked squad.
What's like the color signature on it?
Black and white with a police shield.
Okay, where's the police shield?
On the doors.
All right. Do you have a light bar exposed or hidden or?
Light bar.
Light bar.
Full
Okay.
light bar.
Is there a recording device, a recording system in the squad car?
It was a MVR.
MVR. Okay, and what is an MVR?
It's basically the camera for the squad.
Okay.
That faces forward.
Okay. Do you know if the MVR was activated during this incident we're here to talk about?
I activated when we started out code 3 run.
Okay.
And then once it was deemed dispatch said it was or squad 320 called it their code 4.
Yeah.
We slowed down. I turned off the light and turned off the squad video.
Okay. So when you say code 3,
Meaning lights and siren, it's emergency.
does the camera automatically turn on, or do you manually turn that on?
Automatically should turn on.
Okay. And then when you downgrade, does it turn off automatically, or you manually?
I manually turned off.
Okay, understood. Have you watched that video at all?
No.
So you turned that off before you got to the scene? Is that how I'm understanding it?
Correct.
Okay, so it would just show you driving fast for a little bit, and then okay, understood. All right. That day when this incident happened, prior to the call that you went to assist at 38th in Chicago, do you have any recollection approximately how many calls you had been on prior to that? Rough estimate?
I would say 3, possibly 4. I don't recall offhand.
Do you remember any of those calls?
I remember the last one.
What was that?
Which was a domestic with a custody, parental custody domestic. We spent a couple hours doing that.
Okay. Was there an arrest made or anything significant about that call?
No.
Okay. All right. And then, as far as designating tasks when you're with a partner, who was driving at the time you guys went to 38th in Chicago?
I was driving.
Okay. And so, what's your role as the driver? Is there a designated role that the driver has versus the passenger?
Generally, it's and for me and Derek was driver, so you're pretty much the chauffeur.
Okay.
And he's a report officer, contact officer on the back, just pretty much back.
Okay. And do you do that for the whole shift, or do you switch roles at some point?
Rotate mid-shift.
Mid-shift. Okay. So you hadn't changed those roles yet.
No.
At this time. Okay. All right. When you guys were responding to the call, what information did you have?
We were at the station at the time.
Okay.
And I'd heard 320 kind of call for a backup, and it sounded like it was urgent just by his voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went out, and Derek went out as well, and we went into the squad car. and I guess he was reading remarks as we were en route.
What did you know about the call that they were on?
I should probably, I guess, backtrack a little
Sure.
bit. We were initially dispatched to this call first, out of sector, because we were the only one available. And then 320 cleared their call and canceled us. So and took their call in their sector, so I had heard remarks that it was a forgery in progress.
Okay, all right. And then before we get into kind of the story about what happened, Squad 320. Tell us about those officers. What do you know about them, or have you worked with them?
Very new. I believe Officer King was just 2 days off FTO. And Officer Lane was about a week just off FTO as well.
Okay. So, in your experience, is that pretty common to have two kind of rookie cops ride together?
I would say yes. Yeah.
Did you experience that when you were a rookie cop?
No, because I was assigned to a day watch shift, so there were a bunch of old people there working. So,
So you were by yourself, probably?
I was the young buck working with the older
Gotcha. Okay.
officers.
All right. Well, thanks for answering all those questions, Officer Thao. I guess what we'd like to kind of have you do now is just kind of tell us in your own words, from start to finish, what happened. And then at the end, we'll likely just need to clarify some things if it's okay. But for now, we'd just kind of like to hear from you what you remember about this call and what happened.
So we're at the station, about to eat lunch. 320 ends up asking for a backup. It sounded like it was something urgent, like they were struggling with somebody. So, being that I believe we're the only squad left available by default, we went to go assist them. I drove us about halfway there, and 320 had called code 4, which said they're okay. Dispatch canceled us, but knowing the area, and they're so new too, knowing the area, it's the cut food specialty, that specific store is a known blood gang hangout, especially hostile to police. So knowing it's just those two there, especially very new, I decided to continue, at least to give scene security for them to finish whatever call they were doing. So we continued on to go assist. Once we come in westbound from 38th, I see right at the intersection, I see Park Officer Chang with two, with I believe male and female there. It looked like they were being detained, being that he was outnumbered. I pulled off to the left side to back him up. He waved us off, kind of pointing to the other side of the intersection. Meaning maybe he's wanting us to go to the other side of the intersection. So I ended up getting out of that, driving towards Squad 320. As we get out, I could immediately kind of hear a guy yelling, a citizen yelling, saying something similar to, "Hey, just do what they say," just similar to that. You're not going to win. Basically, trying to reason with a guy. As I approach the squad, the doors open. The rear driver doors open. I see Officer King trying to get the later to be Floyd. At that time, we didn't know his identity, but and Floyd resisted and refused to voluntarily sit in the squad car as Officer King was ordering him to sit in there. I could see that Floyd was stiffening up his body in a way to kind of prevent Officer King to kind of insert him in there. Floyd's kind of a bigger guy, so he's bigger than all of us. And he's yelling, saying he doesn't want to go into the squad car. And is saying he's claustrophobic. From my understanding, he was sitting in the vehicle prior. So, Officer King was trying to get him. They're able to kind of get his head in at some point. Officer Lane is on the other side of the squad. Opened the rear passenger door. Essentially, Officer King is trying to push as Lane is trying to pull him in, because Floyd is resisting and not following directions. At some point, he's able to get his body inside, but ends up flinging himself out of the door where Lane was trying to pull him in.
It's 5 o'clock.
Which is the rear rear passenger door. So he flings himself out. Officer King goes around and tries to kind of get Floyd again, trying to get him inside. So I take the initiative now to take the rear passenger door and become the puller. I never get a chance to pull him in, just because they couldn't get Floyd in close enough for me to grab him as he's resisting. So at that point, I determined that I need to go around and just tell them, hey, this is pointless. This is not going to work. He's not going to go in. He's not going to be cooperative. He's already shown it. If we put him in there, he's just going to end up being the possibility he might end up hurting himself as banging himself on the windows or kicking out, damaging the squad car. Let's just stop what we're doing and put him on the ground and call for an ambulance. It was obvious to me that he was likely high on something. Just from my experience, the way he was acting, and the lack of being able to reason with us or even calm down. So as we put him down, he's still struggling, kind of trying to get up and just not relaxing at all. And they're trying to get control of his body. So I determined, since I could tell that the 3 officers on the ground were getting tired. Everyone's breathing hard. So I decided, let's grab a hobble and try to restrain him that way. So I go in the back of the Squad 320 and this whole time trying to communicate with 320, trying to figure out where their hobble is, because I have no idea where it is, because I'm the only available hands that can do that. So I ended up finding the hobble. I think it was, I believe, Officer Lane's bag, and I think I handed it to one of the officers. But then at that time, several minutes had gone by, and I already know an ambulance on the way. and I already communicated with them to figure out if a ambulance is on the way, and I believe I've asked Officer Lane, hey, just to verify, do you guys have an ambulance on the way? Yes, code 2, and the situation where the crowd was starting to kind of gather up, and especially in that area where there's hostile police, and the way Floyd is acting, I went on the radio and told dispatch that we needed the ambulance here, code 3, emergency lights and sirens. Since the ambulance is already on the way, we decided to just forego the hobble and just hold for now, since if we were to hobble him, once the ambulance arrived, we would have to undo it again to put him onto the stretcher. As we're waiting for ambulance, I take position kind of as a human traffic cone, blade it off a bit. Is just so oncoming traffic northbound in Chicago kind of see me, so the vehicle doesn't hit my partners and Floyd because they're low to the ground. So I wanted to get myself off the traffic, offset myself off the traffic a little bit, and also be able to be in view of the growing crowd. So I just kind of so the rest of the time I'm just kind of focusing on traffic and the crowd. That's what I felt my job was at the time, is crowd control and make sure my guys don't get run over. As the crowd is starting to grow and become loud and hostile toward us, I decided that to forego traffic and put myself in between the crowd and the officers, and turned off looking at just spending majority of my attention looking at the crowd, make sure they don't charge us or bull rush us, as the officers on the ground are defenseless. Eventually EMS arrives, the paramedics arrive, and they board they load in Floyd. So I didn't see when they loaded him, but I was kind of focused on the crowd at that moment. So Officer Chavin kind of tapped me and, hey, let's go, we're done. So that's when we left that original Squad 320 and went across the street to check on Officer Cheng, since he was outnumbered. That right there is pretty much essentially what he pretty much done with any contact with Floyd.
Okay. What happened though after that? Like, you went over and saw Officer Chang. What happened from there?
Trying to figure out what exactly are we going to do with this car. What? Because me and Officer Chavin are the backup officer. We have no idea what's going on. As far as is this guy detained or whatnot, we're acting in good faith with Squad 320 and 830, because we're the last ones there. So as we're trying to figure out what's going to happen next, because this is 320's call, it's their call what they want to do with the vehicle. we're just backing up. So 320, I guess Officer King said that at some point, well, I guess let me backtrack a little bit here. As I'm trying to figure out with Chang what we're going to do, we just kind of stood by, and then the fire department shows up. At that time, I don't know what the status of Floyd is. Fire department shows up, and they ask us what do we need, and I'm like, I'm kind of baffled, like we just needed an ambulance. I don't know what you guys are here for. I assumed that was unrelated to us, maybe with a medical inside to cut food or something, because the fire department went inside to go check. As they're checking, dispatch asks us, tells us that the fire department is looking for the ambulance, so I walked up to the fire engine and told the driver, the driver, I believe, like, hey, the dispatch says you guys need to go to 36 and Park. They're doing CPR. And that's when the fire guys come back. I kind of tell them the same thing. And they end up getting back on and then heading to 36 and Park to assist with the ambulance. End up going back to the Officer Chang, and he ends up clearing his. I tell him, hey, basically, it looks like this guy is being worked on, so this could potentially be a critical incident if he dies. I don't know his status, but they're doing CPR. So just make sure to do a report if anything comes, supplement or whatever. If anything changes, I'll let you know. I think he takes off. Lane, I think later on, I believe he went to ambulance with. Went in the ambulance with Floyd. So it left Officer King there with us. And then we're trying. I guess we talked to him about what he wanted to do with the vehicle. Or actually, he's telling us that. So he started proceeding to tell me, like, kind of like, this vehicle is legally parked. We're just gonna take the keys for safekeeping and leave it here. But I stop him, and I don't. And this is more maybe attributed to his lack of experience. I don't think he realized the gravity of the situation, potential situation. So I tell him, no, we're not. We're not gonna leave the scene. You need to call the sergeant, notify them of what's happening. We need to hold the scene. Especially the vehicle, because it could potentially be evidence of this whole incident. So he ends up, I don't remember, I think Officer Chavin might have been the one that called. I don't recall we've been one of those two. Sergeant Pluger, and he arrives on scene. I believe Officer King fills him in on what occurred.
What happens from there?
Sergeant Pluger said that he needed to go check on the status of Floyd, and me and Officer Shavner to go with him up there. at this time, Lane gets the ride back with the fire department and dropped off. So they're instructed to stay with the vehicle at the scene and hold the scene for as potential crime scene until we know the status of Floyd. Me and Officer Chauvin end up heading up to HCMC to meet with Sergeant Pluter at HCMC, check on the status of Floyd.
What did you learn?
Through the entirety of our HCMC, we just stood out of the we were out in the hallway. About we were probably there 5-10 minutes, and I believe a doctor comes out and informs us that Floyd was pronounced dead. I left out of the ambulance bay, and we stood by the ambulance bay. I guess Sergeant Bluger was probably talking to the watch commanders or informing them.
Okay. And what did you and Officer Chauvin do?
We stood out just waiting for our next instruction.
Did you receive some instruction?
Yes, to wait for our escort officers.
Okay. And what does that mean?
When officers in Minneapolis get into a critical incident, there's kind of a mechanism where the department has a escort officer, where both everyone's separated, and has a escort officer come and wait with us and transport us to City Hall.
Who was your escort officer?
I believe it was Sergeant Mohammed. Excuse me.
Sergeant Mohammed?
Yeah.
Where did he take you?
City Hall.
Anywhere specific in City Hall?
I believe it was I want to say room 100.
Okay. And then you remained there for some amount of time?
Yes.
Okay. Is it okay if we just clarify some things?
Sure, you can.
Yeah. Okay. So Cup Foods at 38th in Chicago. You mentioned having some experience at Cup Foods. Can you elaborate on that? What kind of calls over your time in the 3rd Precinct have you had at Cup Foods?
A lot of shots fired, fights. I think I might have picked up maybe a couple of people there on warrants.
On warrants, you said?
Correct.
Okay. The call that 320 was on, that was you said a forgery call?
Correct.
Was there any mention of violence or weapons in that call that you recall?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall, like, the essence of what the complaint was?
I believe it was somebody passed a fake, I think remarks somebody tried to pass a fake bill.
Okay.
The person was appeared possibly intoxicated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you had experience with counterfeit money being passed at businesses?
Yes.
Okay. How would you typically handle if that was all
Generally,
you knew? How would you handle that?
What do you mean?
Let's say the call is exactly what you said. Somebody passed a fake $20 bill in our store and appeared intoxicated. How would you have handled that? Or how would you typically handle a call like that?
If we have a suspect, I guess they would be detained.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we get more backstory. While being detained, we'd probably get more of a backstory from the store.
Mm-hmm.
And then verify if it was actually a fake bill or not.
Sure, well, that makes sense. Okay. Is it a fairly common call?
I would say it's a rarity to have a suspect with forgery to actually be still there.
They don't stick around, no?
Generally not.
Okay. But was the information that you recalled that there was a suspect on scene, or was the call just that the person who passed the bill seemed to be intoxicated?
I believe in the remarks they had mentioned a vehicle
Okay.
that was parked across the street.
So that would be unusual in your experience to have a suspect in a forgery or a counterfeit bill still be on scene.
Correct.
Okay. When you guys get there, when I say you guys, I mean you and Officer Chauvin get there. You first see Officer Chang, who then points to Officers Lane and King. You describe seeing Mr. Floyd resisting. Can you just elaborate on that and describe more specifically what you saw him doing?
He was in handcuffs, kind of stiffen up his body.
Okay.
Where, in order for somebody to kind of sit in the squad car, especially a big person like him, you need their cooperation as far as bending their knees.
Okay.
And because it could be tight back there, especially for a big person.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have some level of cooperation from the suspect, it's going to be extremely tough, especially if he won't bend his knee.
Okay.
And he's a bigger guy. And I think they asked several times to sit down, sit in the squad car, and he's not following. He's refusing to sit.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned he was saying he's claustrophobic. What else was he saying?
That he didn't want. I think he would say he wanted to talk or something like that.
Okay.
But he was instructed to sit in the squad car.
Do you know what the urgency was to get him in the squad car?
No.
Do you know if he was formally under arrest?
No, we're acting good faith.
So as far as you knew, they wanted to get him in the squad.
Yep, backing officers.
Okay. Have you had experience with people going under the influence?
Yes.
Okay. Because you described that you felt that he maybe was under the influence.
Correct.
All right. Is it, in your experience, has it been common, or is it common that people who are under the influence are sometimes hard to rationalize with?
Yes.
Did you see any, or at the time there, have any thoughts about maybe an alternative way to handle this, being a little more veteran officer?
First, it wasn't our call. We're just a backup officer, so we don't. I don't have back information as far as what happened prior to us arriving.
But you're seeing what you're seeing right there in front of you.
Yep.
And obviously what the rookie officers are doing isn't working. Did you make any suggestions about maybe an alternative to trying to get him in the car?
Later on.
Later on. But what about prior to getting him in the car?
No.
Okay. Did you actually physically assist trying to put him in the car?
No, I never.
You weren't able to get a hold of him?
I don't recall ever touching him.
Okay. All right. But you went around to the passenger side where Officer Lane was. Do I have that correct?
At some point, yes.
At some point. But then he had already kind of, I think you said, fling. He flinged himself out of the car?
Yep.
What did he do to fling? How did he do that?
So it's kind of like he scooped himself and then kind of with his foot pushed himself out against the side of the squad.
Okay, pushed himself out and then kind of...
From my view, that's what I saw.
Okay, and then came out of the car. And then you made the suggestion to put him on the car.
And so they try again to do the same thing again.
What do you mean?
Try to get him to sit in the squad car.
Oh, okay.
But from that side. And at that time, I'm like, all right, guys, it's pointless to do this. Let's put him on the ground.
Was there ever any discussion or suggestion that maybe we just talk to him and see what the problem is?
I would assume they probably.
What about from you, though? I
Okay.
mean, did you make that suggestion or try to do that?
I was not the contact officer, so I did not attempt to do that.
Understood. Okay. So you went through you said the 40-hour CIT, crisis intervention training.
Yes.
From your experience, have you used that on the street?
Yes.
Those techniques that you learned in that crisis intervention training? Was there anything about this call that suggested to you maybe this might be a good use of those skills as a crisis intervention officer?
I'd say it doesn't hurt to try.
Did you try?
I did not try. I was not the contact officer, so.
Why does that matter?
I don't have much of a, I guess, because I would just kind of backtrack a little bit here. I don't know what happened prior to it.
Okay.
I guess the only attempt you could say is, just kind of tell him to relax.
Okay. Did you do that?
I did.
Okay. How did he respond to that?
He didn't respond at all.
Okay.
He was still kind of in a manic stage, I guess.
It seems you use the word pointless. That what the officers were doing seemed to be pointless.
At that point, it was. We've already spent several minutes trying to get in the squad car from the rear driver's side.
Do you know how many minutes you actually were spending by the time you got there? I know you don't know what was happening prior, but when you got there, about how many minutes?
I wasn't counting.
Rough estimate? Did it seem like several or a couple, or what do you think?
Maybe a couple minutes, roughly.
Okay. What was the purpose of calling for the ambulance?
I felt that that he was likely gonna that he was possibly on drugs.
Okay.
Just the way he was acting, erratic behavior, and we wouldn't be, even if we wanted to transport him, we wouldn't be able to transport him the way he was acting.
Okay, so what was the hope that the ambulance or paramedics could do for you?
At least assess them and figure out what we're going to do from there.
Okay, even though he's struggling with you guys?
Yes.
What could they do to help with a struggling person?
They can restrain him better.
Better?
Yep.
Okay.
Why don't you elaborate on that?
So instead of being handcuffs, usually when we deal with people that are kind of excited, delirium, or on high on something, and have and they're out of control, we assist with holding them down. He's putting them on the ambulance gurney there, and usually what they'll do is handcuff him, their own handcuffs, and handcuff that person to the gurney.
Does that help calm people down?
It restrained them until paramedics can kind of assess what they need to go from there.
Okay. You mentioned just a second ago excited delirium, I think you said, correct? What is that, as far as you understand?
I guess it could be a mental health or more than likely drug related, where they go on a high, like extreme high, and they're acting erratic. They're not making sense. Kind of generally, from my experience, sweating profusely. You're unable to reason with them at all. They don't really have any self-awareness, and potentially very explosive and violent. If they have drugs in their system, they kind of have that superhuman strength.
Okay.
With if there's drugs on board.
Could excited delirium also potentially be fatal to a person?
Yes.
Okay. Where did you learn? How do you know this about excited delirium?
we learned it through well, it's part of being licensed is you go through the Minnesota Post Board curriculum there. That's where it initially was taught about that, and then there's further training with MPD.
Does, in your understanding of excited delirium, does struggling or fighting with, let's say, officers have any role in exacerbating excited delirium or making that worse?
I think that's kind of out of his scope of knowledge.
Okay.
And you're asking questions like he's a medical doctor.
Well, I think
If you have a question about his training, I'd ask you.
that is a training question. I would say.
Well, you didn't ask it that way.
In your training on excited delirium, have you heard or learned any information about the role a struggle has with excited delirium?
I think I've read it before.
Okay. Was there a concern at the scene about excited delirium?
I would say, for me, it was at the time it was more like a drug related, potentially possibly like consuming drugs before like officers.
Okay. Did you hear Officer Lane specifically say he was concerned about excited delirium?
I did not.
Okay. Did you think that Mr. Floyd was perhaps having a drug overdose? Is that what you're trying to say?
It's a possibility.
Possibility.
In my mind, it was a possibility.
Does that change in any way the way officers would, in your experience and training, officers would respond to somebody?
I guess it really depends if they have knowledge of it or not.
Okay. What were some of the things that Mr. Floyd was saying when he was on the ground being restrained that you heard?
He was saying that he couldn't breathe, but then he was obviously yelling and talking.
What does that mean?
Obviously, we're in school. We're trained like, hey, if suspects claiming that they can't breathe, if they're talking, they're breathing. Obviously, you got to be able to breathe in order to say something.
Okay.
It's no different than I guess getting to foot chase somebody and they're exhausted and we're exhausted and obviously we're taking a lot of breaths and it feels like we're not breathing,
Okay.
able to breathe.
From where you were standing, where were other officers positioned on Mr. Floyd?
I believe Chauvin was at the head of the Floyd. I believe Chang was in the middle and torso, and Lane was at the foot.
Did you say Chang?
Excuse me, clarify. King.
Oh, King. Okay. So Officer Chang is the park officer,
Yeah,
but
correct.
the other. Okay.
Do you know the spelling on Officer King's name versus Chang, just so they can understand it?
I believe you already have.
So Chang is Chang,
Yeah.
and Kang is Kueng, or something like that. That's how I understand it, at least.
Yeah, he's kind of a newer guy. So
Kang and Chang.
I couldn't tell you how to spell it correctly.
But just so it's clear, Officer Chauvin, Officer Kang, and then Officer Lane at the feet.
Yes.
Did I have that right? Okay. Who are you closest to in this kind of chain of or group of officers?
Chauvin.
What did you see Officer Chauvin doing?
He's struggling with the guy because he's kind of moving a little bit, squirreling around.
Okay.
I think at some point I asked the guy, "What are you on?" Meaning, what drugs are you using? Because I know I am with Sunway, and generally
Want to know?
they'd like to know that information. He didn't respond.
Okay. How was Officer Chauvin getting control of Mr. Floyd?
I can't see what he's doing with his arms or anything like that because I'm kind of offset him a little bit. My first initial view of it, it's kind of his knees are moving, depending on like the suspect. It's moving between the back of the back of the head, neck, shoulder blade.
Which knee?
I believe it's a left knee.
Left knee. Okay. Do you know? Have you seen that or used a maneuver similar to that?
No.
Are you trained to handcuff people?
Yes.
Is that something you have to refresh on every year with your use of force
Yes.
training? Okay. How many different ways are there to handcuff people?
Lots of ways.
Can you think of like 3 off the top of your head that you're probably trained in every year?
This is over, under.
How about the position of the person you're trying to arrest or handcuff?
Usually we do, as far as practice, they'll be standing on their knees and on their stomach.
Prone, I think they call
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay. And so you've trained in how to handcuff somebody prone.
Correct.
Do you use your knee when you're typically trying to handcuff somebody in a prone position?
I've seen trainers teach use the knee to kind of leverage yourself.
Is that how you're trained, though? To do a prone handcuffing technique, to use your knee to help handcuff a person?
What do you mean here? Could you elaborate?
Well, are you trained have you been trained by the Minneapolis Police Department to handcuff somebody in a prone position?
Yes.
Do you utilize the knees to effectuate that handcuffing?
I guess there's a specific technique where they teach where you have where you have the person's arms between their knees.
Right. Okay. So was what Officer Chauvin doing similar or different to what you would normally do if you're trying to prone handcuff somebody?
Floyd was already handcuffed, so.
Right. Okay. So that maneuver that you saw Officer Chauvin use, is that something you've been trained in?
I've never used it.
Have you ever seen Officer Chauvin do that before in calls?
I don't recall.
Have you ever done that on a call?
I've never done that.
Okay. Did you see his knee on did you see Officer Chauvin's knee on Mr. Floyd's neck?
At some point,
At
yes.
some point, okay. Was it constantly there, or did it move around, or something else?
From what I can, because I'm majority of my attention is focused on traffic. I'm not always looking down at what they're doing. I'm trusting them to do what they're doing, and they're kind of trusting me to kind of watch their back.
Yeah.
So I'm spending the majority of my time looking out at traffic and the crowd.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. So you're not constantly
I'm not
watching,
there,
but you are looking back just to make sure everything's
right.
looking back and forth, it sounds like?
Right.
Okay. The hobble. The purpose of the hobble was what?
To restrain a person, a fighting person that is in handcuffs.
Okay. And what part of the body are you trying to restrain if you've got him handcuffed?
Generally, their foot to waist.
Okay. Was he somehow using his feet that they needed to be hobbled, in your opinion?
I believe I saw Officer Lane kind of struggle with getting control of Floyd at the leg. So that's why I wanted to get to prevent either of us getting hurt or Lane getting hurt or getting kicked.
Yeah. Did the hobble ever get applied?
I don't believe so.
Do you know?
I think we kind of forego that because the ambulance is already.
Well, that's right. You did say. I'm sorry. Okay. At some point, did Mr. Floyd kind of stop actively moving around and kicking and things like that?
I think when that occurred, I think I was already, most of my back was already kind of away.
Could you hear him saying anything
No.
differently about, hey, I'll cooperate or anything to that effect?
I wasn't like focused on what he's saying at that time.
What were you focused on?
Trying to communicate with those guys, and also paying attention to traffic and the crowd.
So the crowd, if we could just talk about that, you a couple times referred to that crowd as hostile. What is it they were saying to you that made you think they were, or made you believe they were being hostile towards you?
Good sign is usually they start cursing at you.
Okay. Anything else specific that they were saying to you?
As far as what they were saying, like having conversation.
What they were yelling at you and
they
other
were saying,
officers.
get off him, get off his neck, look at him.
Suggesting what?
Check
to
on
you?
him. Yeah.
Check on him? Did you do that?
That was not my job.
Okay. So no?
No.
Okay. Is the crowd yelling at you and basically all the officers to check on him, to get off him? Was that them being hostile, or was that them trying to alert your attention that something was going on with Mr. Floyd? And how did you take that?
Several times they couldn't they came onto the street.
Okay.
So, and I had to tell them several times to get back on the street. And at one point, one of I think it was a kid or something, came on the street, and then I tell him to back off, and he ends up pushing. I'm kind of pushing him back on the street.
Pushing him back.
Sidewalk, and he ends up pushing me. So that, to me, that's kind of escalating the act a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So then the decision is made to have EMS come step it up to Code 3?
Yeah, at some point, I asked, chronology, I don't recall exactly where it's at, but I do remember asking Lane if that ambulance coming and what code, and he told me it was 2, and then I wanted to hear Code 3 because the environment that was occurring in the hostile crowd. And
okay. Did the Code 3 response have anything to do with Mr. Floyd's change in disposition?
I don't recall. I guess the events of when I believe when I was talking to Lane, I believe that Floyd was still alive and talking.
Did you observe, though, a change in his demeanor from when you first got there till the paramedics got there?
I would say the majority of the time I wasn't looking at Floyd. I'm just primarily focused on the crowd and the traffic.
Was the crowd letting you know that there was a change in Mr. Floyd's
Yes.
disposition? What were they telling you?
They're saying that he was moving.
Do you have any concerns about that?
Not
the crowd, but Mr. Floyd.
I was concerned with the crowd. I mean, I would hope that the other officers would do their job and check on them.
So you put your trust in the other three to take care of Mr. Floyd, and you took care of the crowd.
Correct.
Okay. So when the medics get there, what do they assess him?
That part I'm not looking at the medics at all.
Okay.
I know the ambulance is behind me because they come up behind me, but I'm not aware of what at that time what they're doing because I'm not looking at them.
With that crowd there, it sounds, and we've all seen some videos from it. It seems like it was a little chaotic. Did you ever call for additional officers to assist you guys?
I did not.
Yeah.
But the medics get there, and then do you see it when they roll him on his side, Mr. Floyd? Do you see Mr. Floyd at that time?
I think I spent my majority of the time looking at the crowds. I didn't know when they.
You didn't see them roll him on his side?
I don't recall seeing that.
Okay. How about when they get him up on the stretcher? Do you
I
make any observations?
I didn't see that. Recall seeing that part either.
Okay. Do you know if any weapons or anything were found on Mr. Floyd by
Not that
officers?
not that I'm aware of.
How about after the fact? Did you learn about any weapons that
I
were
did
found?
not learn of any weapons.
Okay. The vehicle that he was in, did you search that car at all?
I did not.
Did Officer King or Officer Lang take a peek at it in your presence?
I don't. I think they might have just locked the doors. I'm not sure if they actually searched the vehicle or not.
Okay. Did you have any injuries sustained? How about, did any of the other officers in your presence complain of any potential injuries?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of? Okay. Did you see the counterfeit bill at any point later on in the night?
I think
The alleged counterfeit bill, I guess.
I think Officer King had like I'm not sure if that's the specific bill, but he had like a bill that he was. I'm assuming.
Did it look phony to you?
I didn't.
You didn't see it?
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
I never looked at it.
All right.
I just saw it from a distance.
Understood. Okay, so the first sergeant that shows up is Sergeant Pluger, is that correct?
Correct.
Is he your sergeant?
Yes.
Okay. What information did you tell Sergeant Pluger, if any?
I mean, I didn't debrief him or anything, or I didn't brief him or anything as far as the incident.
Were you present when somebody briefed Sergeant?
I think I was there, but I wasn't paying attention. I actually went to the squad car to just check on the status, any updates, just to see any remarks, updates as far as of Floyd's status.
Were you concerned that Mr. Floyd was
Oh yeah, obviously.
in danger
Yeah,
of
obviously.
death or something? Okay.
I was concerned of status.
Okay. Well, when you say obviously, what do you, I mean, why is that obvious?
I mean, obviously, you don't want you don't want people dying, or I don't wish death upon
Right.
people.
So did you suspect that something bad was happening there at the scene when the paramedics came?
I realized that this might have been because a big incident when the fire department showed up, and they're here to help the ambulance.
Okay.
And generally, when they show up, the ambulance needs help with whatever medical procedures, like
Okay.
CPR or something.
I
So that's
understand.
when
So when the ambulance left and then the fire department showed up asking where the ambulance was,
Yep.
you put two and two together that this was a more significant call than maybe what you thought. Is that
Yes.
accurate or not accurate?
Yes.
Okay. After learning about, well, let me see here. So Officer Lane's on the ambulance, as far as you know.
Later on, I find out.
You found out he was.
I figure out that he was ambulance when they drop him off.
So before Sergeant Pluger gets there, it's just you, Officer Chauvin, Officer King, and Officer Chang?
Yes.
All right. What's the discussion that happens there amongst you guys?
The discussion I mainly have and recall just having it was with with Chang, just letting him know that
Yep.
what's going on. Just make sure you do a report.
Okay.
Just because he didn't do too much.
Yeah. Is your body camera on this whole time, or do you deactivate it at some point?
I think at that time we were just standing around, so it was deactivated.
You deactivated it?
The scene had already been code for, and we've been standing by for several minutes.
All right. Did Officer King share with you kind of an overview of what happened before you guys got there? You and Officer Chauvin got there?
I didn't talk to him as far as what happened. my only interaction with him was when he was talking as if they were going to just clear the scene, like it's kind of like another call.
Okay.
And saying that they were just going to leave the car there, and I kind of at that point I don't think, due to experience, I don't think he realized the gravity of the situation.
Right.
So I kind of broke it down for him, like, no, we're not leaving this scene, and we're not leaving this car here. There's two a male and a female, I think, that were there, and it seemed like as they were leaving, it seemed like they wanted to come back to the car.
So you were giving some instruction to Officer King about what the proper procedure
What the proper procedure, because I didn't want the integrity of evidence to possibly disappear and leave the department, looking like it. We're trying to cover it up.
And as one of the veteran officers on the scene, you saw that as your kind of responsibility to take control of that?
Yes.
Or provide some instruction?
Give him what he should do.
Okay.
So I told him that we're not going to do that. You shouldn't do that. You need to call a supervisor and have them make the decision.
Any reason why that instruction and advice that you gave to Officer King after the fact, any reason why you didn't offer that kind of same leadership advice earlier when they were struggling with Mr. Floyd?
I didn't have enough information.
Okay.
In my opinion.
When you learned that Mr. Floyd had died, what'd you think?
Yeah, I don't want anyone to die. I mean, it was kind of a somber moment, especially for me, and my heart kind of sank.
Mm-hmm. Did you and Officer Chauvin talk about it there in the ambulance bay?
I don't remember talking to him as far as we generally, our relationship-wise, we don't really talk much. We're natural, quiet person.
Were you worried about this?
Personally, I was worried about it. Yeah.
Is that why you guys didn't talk about it? Because you knew that this was probably going to...
Yeah, this is probably going to be a big deal.
Okay. Did you notify anybody else after you learned?
I did. I told Officer Chang that, hey, I'll let you know of updates.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent him a message saying, hey, give me a call. It's my work phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I could tell him that, hey, this is now kind of a critical incident. You need to tell your sergeant. Call your sergeant, let him know what happened. And it's a critical incident.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the extent of it.
So you gave him a heads up.
Right.
That this could be something. Okay.
Generally, Minneapolis, the city, they wouldn't really talk too much with the park, so I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't surprised.
That seems fair. Have you since this incident had an opportunity to view any of the videos, especially maybe the main video that the bystander took?
I'd say I'd forward through some.
You what?
I viewed some, but not in its entirety.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on that video? Because like you said, you were facing the crowd, so you weren't really paying much attention, but that video is obviously paying a lot of attention on what Officer Chauvin and Mr. Floyd's interaction is, and I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Can I ask a question while you're asking what the thoughts are? We don't normally put thoughts down in police reports. You give them in summaries.
Well, he's a human being. I'm just curious what his
I understand that,
opinion
but
is
he's
on
here to
that.
give a voluntary statement about what happened, not necessarily what his thoughts were.
Okay. You don't want to answer that question? Is that what you're
I'm
saying?
advising.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll take his advice.
Sounds good. Do you think there was anything you could have done differently to intervene?
I'm in the belief that there's always something different you can always do in every single call.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to second guess, right? It's easy to look in hindsight. Have you thought about things like that and what maybe could have been done differently?
Yeah.
Like what?
Well, I guess if we're being human, if differently, I guess. Um, I guess to be more observant towards uh, the Floyd. When I'm kind of standing up and paying attention to traffic and maybe too focused on what guarding the scene.
Thank you. What effect has this whole event you've been through had on you personally?
I'd say this is it's a horrible feeling. You don't officer you don't ever want. You hope to go through your career never having to deal with a situation like this. When someone dies. It's affect my family and kind of taking it'd be fair to say it's taken a mental toll.
Yeah. Have you been in a critical incident prior to this?
No.
Mind if I ask you some follow-up questions?
Sure.
Okay. Earlier in the interview, you mentioned that your training was extended a month. Was that in the academy, or was that an FTO process?
Not field training.
Field training. While you were in the academy, did you have any deficiencies in any of your training?
It's like 10 years ago. I suppose you could find. I don't really recall too much. I guess there's probably some as a new officer would be a lot of deficiency. I guess.
Okay. All right. So a lot of deficiencies.
To be critical of myself as far as training.
Was there anything that held you back in the academy?
I guess it's natural for recruits to, and probably true for me as well, as decision making.
Okay, so there was special attention to your decision making while you were in the academy. Is that accurate?
Yep, but you kind of deciding what you're going to do on the call.
Okay. In the FTO process, that was extended a month, correct?
Yep.
What were the reasons for the extension?
I'm trying to remember here. I think it was like got into maybe I might have been like officer safety. I don't recall off the top of my head exactly what. I think it might have been a few things.
A few things.
Yeah.
Do you recall any of those?
I'm trying to think. I think it's kind of more officer safety decision making. I think it was.
So officer safety and decision making.
Right.
Okay. All right. Let's move more towards kind of the incident itself. You mentioned a couple times during the interview that it was pointless. It's not going to work. And you're referring to getting Mr. Floyd into the back of the squad car. Is that accurate?
Right.
Okay. Based on that, you made a decision to direct the officers to put Mr. Floyd on the ground.
I suggested we put him on the ground.
Okay. Is there any reason why you decided to direct them to put Mr. Floyd on the ground specifically, as opposed to other options?
It's the best way. We're taught it's the best way to control somebody is when they're on the ground, proned out. that's the best maximum way to control someone.
Okay. And how many officers were attempting to control Mr. Floyd at the time?
3.
Okay. And was he in handcuffs?
Yes.
Okay. Is it typical for a suspect in handcuffs to not be controlled with 3 officers present?
What do you mean, like?
Is that general? Does that happen often?
Are you referring to him and his experience?
Yes, in your experience.
I haven't run into a mini experience, I guess, where 3 officers have to restrain him.
Okay. So it's not typical.
It doesn't happen daily, I guess. It's a rarity, I guess we'd say.
Okay. You mentioned during the interview that you were concerned about the 3 officers who were holding Mr. Floyd down and the traffic, correct?
Traffic, crowd control. I don't really, since I'm not having to restrain him, I don't really have a job, so I kind of have to. Therefore, kind of by default, from my experience in our training is, then you need to take a guard position for your fellow officers.
Okay. At any point did you mention to the officers that they should be removed from the road and go onto the sidewalk?
No.
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
It just never occurred to me.
Did Mr. Floyd, based on your observations, struggle the entire time he was on the ground?
Yes. From the time I've seen.
It's 6 o'clock.
I wouldn't say from the time I'm observing them. The majority of the time he was struggling.
Okay. Did you ever see him cease to struggle?
I believe I did peek maybe a couple of times, just check, just kind of look back to make sure they're still there.
Okay. And what was happening? Was Mr. Floyd just laying there, or was he talking, or what was happening when you peeked?
He was just laying there.
Okay. You said earlier that you could hear Mr. Floyd making statements. Is that accurate? Such as, I can't breathe.
Yep.
Did you ever cease hearing Mr. Floyd talk?
Yes.
Okay. Did you check on him at that point?
That was not my job at that moment. To do that, I would trust the other officers as they're in contact.
Okay. What was your job? You mentioned the crowd and the traffic. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. As far as people talking to you, what were they saying? I know you mentioned it before. What were they saying?
A lot of, they're obviously upset, saying check on him, he's not breathing or not moving, something in those terms.
Okay, and at that point, did you check on Mr. Floyd?
No, because my job is scene security. I would trust on those guys. I can't multitask. God only gave me one body and two hands and 2 legs. I can't be 2 places at once. So.
Okay.
Real quickly, at room 100, if it's okay, let's talk about that. When you went down to room 100, what was going on at room 100 when you got there?
I think they're trying to figure out. I think they're calling command staff and trying to get union reps and lawyers.
Okay. Did anybody from Minneapolis Police Department, administration, or any other level take a statement from you about what happened?
You said administration?
Yeah.
No.
How about the union or anybody else?
A union lawyer.
Okay. So you spoke to an attorney about what happened, but nobody else?
No.
Until today?
What do you mean?
Like, is today the first time you've really given a statement to someone other than your attorney?
This really the only time really given a whole detail of whatever.
Okay. Were you, on the date of this incident down at room 100, offered
the opportunity to consent to a blood sample.
You can talk about what happened that day, but we're not going to talk about who asked him to speak or anything like that.
What about a blood sample?
That's fair.
Were you offered a blood sample by the BCA?
No.
You were not offered one?
No.
Okay.
I was told by that I was a witness officer, so they didn't.
Okay, so because the belief was that you didn't actively participate in restraining him, that you were not offered a blood sample.
Correct.
Okay, I wasn't there. I didn't know that. All right. Officer Chauvin, does he have more years on than you?
Yes.
Do you know how many years on approximately he has? It's okay if you don't. I'm just curious.
I'm not sure.
Okay, but he's senior to you.
Correct.
All right. What's kind of the? I mean, does he have a supervisory role with the police department?
No.
Patrol officer level, just like you?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any, like, informal kind of hierarchy when you have somebody with more experience or more years on versus less years on? Like, do you somehow treat them differently?
Sure.
How so?
Just as far as who's going to drive and who's going to sit in the passenger.
Okay. So if Chauvin said, I want to drive today, but you really wanted to drive today, you would defer to him because he has more seniority?
Correct.
Would that be an example, I guess? Okay. I don't really have any other questions.
Is it okay if I ask some questions?
No.
Okay.
I specifically talked to Jeff Paulson and said we were fine with the FBI being here, but that you weren't able to ask questions. I thought that was communicated to you.
Okay. No, it wasn't in such definitive terms. I do have some definition questions from training stuff that.
Why don't I suggest you speak to Mr. Paulson and
Okay.
forward those questions to me.
Okay, that works.
Anything else, James? Mr. Thao, is there anything else you can think of that might be important for us to know that we haven't discussed today or asked you about? I know we've asked you a lot of questions.
Right.
Thank you for answering them.
Could I ask one question? You were asked whether you were offered a blood sample. You indicated that you were not offered a blood sample because you were told you were a witness officer. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And who told you that?
I believe it was a BCA agent.
Do you recall which BCA officer told you that?
I did not get the name.
Male or female?
I think it was a male.
About him that you remember?
White guy.
Okay. That describes a few of us. Okay.
I didn't get his name.
So the bottom line is, though, you were told you didn't need to. We weren't even going to ask you for a blood draw because you.
Yeah, we.
considered a witness.
As far as my understanding, I think somebody went to get clarity as well, and they said since I was a witness officer, the only thing they needed was take my picture and body camera.
Okay, and that was done.
Correct.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Pollard?